Happy birthday, Tristan.
Happy birthday, Scott. We've been doing this for, I'd say 2 years. We've been doing this closer to 3 years because we started the podcast like 5 months, I think, before the actual show started. We started in like March and we released our first episode in, 7 months because we released it in October.
Yeah, we released, we recorded, I think we started recording it really, really early in 2021? Yeah. And yeah, we didn't release it. We thought October would be a fun time to release it because it's like aliens and like, I don't know, spooky, scary maybe.
Plus, we also knew that I was going to have to take like 2 months off of making episodes because of the baby. So
because you were a father now. But yeah, we've been doing this podcast for like 2 years. A little over then, as you're saying.
Yeah.
2 years.
And yet they still find new things. And we've only ever covered like 8 or 9 episodes of the show.
Do they still find new things? Or do they recycle the same things over and over again?
I'm sure we're going to learn.
We're going to learn. But there's still so much to talk about when debunking ancient aliens and ancient astronaut theory and conspiracy theories. And I think really early on, we thought about playing around with this idea of diving into like current alien theories, but then we never did until just recently when it's like, all right, suddenly governments are like, but what about aliens?
Yeah, that's very fortuitous for us.
I know. Good stuff.
But not only did we cover like a UFO topic, but then like UFOs decided to become news. And now like because of the UAP thing, I think a lot more journalists and such are taking like other things seriously. So now whenever like the Mexican president tweets that there's a cryptid that he saw a goblin, it makes the news. So.
Yeah. And of course we have to talk about it because we need to capitalize on some of that good SEO, make sure that people know that we exist. And this show has grown a lot. Can I tell you something, Tristan, that I learned recently? I used to have a podcast way back in the day before this that was just it was just called the Nerdsync podcast, you know, when like all YouTubers had a podcast. And I mean, people do still now. Every YouTuber has a podcast, it seems anyway. But mine was just like, I don't know, here's a longer form version of the stuff I talk about on my YouTube channel. It's just, you know, comics and movies and things like that. I thought that was a pretty successful podcast. I went back to look at it, like all of my statistics, and I think like total, the show got like 50,000 downloads over its lifetime. This show that we've been doing is so much more successful than that.
Yeah. I had actually 2 podcasts before this. 3, actually, if you really want to think about it. Yeah, before this, I had a podcast called YouTubers United that I ran with Will Fox. That was like a YouTube advice podcast that was trying to like do what the YouTube gurus did, but didn't do it with like a massive paywall in front of all the useful advice. So it was like supposed to be like a YouTuber help podcast that was designed to have like actionable advice in it instead of like, have you thought about titles?
Make sure your titles are good.
Yeah, make sure you're like, it's a lot of like YouTube guru advice when like there's like the scene in The Simpsons where like they ask like, what kind of evidence do you have to this lawyer? And he's like, well, I have hearsay and conjecture. Those are kinds of evidence.
There you go.
And then before that, actually concurrently with that, I was like the head of a committee that ran like my university's grad student radio show that also pivoted into becoming a podcast. That was part of my initiative.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So like from like 2015-ish to 2014, 2015 to about 2017, I was like involved with that show. And then if you want to go really, really old, this one's going to be very embarrassing to me, Tristan, the person.
Oh gosh.
But from about 2008, when I was a whopping 19 years old, until about 2010, when university kind of killed it because I was at a dorm that had 1 gigabyte of downloads allowed a week.
Nice. A gig a week. Use it sparingly.
Yeah, because I lived in like rural Quebec. So I ran a podcast that was called The Elitists, and it was a video game podcast specifically dedicated to originally Blizzard Entertainment games, and then in like the last year or so, specifically StarCraft 2. And I don't really talk about, this is like the first time I think I've ever mentioned the bridge between these 2 periods of my content creation life, where I had a very early, like in my late teens, early 20s content creator career as like a StarCraft.
Why?
I shoutcasted like professional professional games and like interviewed creators in the scene and stuff like that. It's why I have like a weird, like small cadre of friends who are like people who were like big in the StarCraft 2 scene in like 2010.
Wow.
And then I kind of just stopped because of university, and I decided to have a life for a bit. And then I went to grad school and decided to stop having a life again.
This is all news to me. I didn't know this about you either.
I don't even think my wife knows about the elitists.
Oh no. This is something that only you and I know now, and all the listeners as well.
I denounce and reject everything. It was such an unprofessional podcast. It was the worst.
Why are we talking about all this? Why are we being self-indulgent right now?
We're navel gazing based on the fact that this show is 2 years old, and I would argue, like, as aside from, I would say in concurrence with Step Back, that this is like probably my like favorite creative project I've done.
Yeah.
What's it called? I can't even, like, I put it on par with Step Back as far as like the passion and love for doing this weird show. And I also like that I get to spend a lot of time with my good old buddy Scott.
Yeah. We talk about this a lot, but like when you and I sit down to record every week, we plan to record at like 10 a.m. and then we don't actually record until 11 a.m. because it's just you and I talking for like an hour before we actually hit the record button.
Just catching up, just talking about the cat and the kid and various degrees of ADHD stimulant medication.
Yep, just swapping prescriptions around. You know us. I did look it up. Do you want to know something about our statistics? How much better is this podcast than my other one that I talked about? We are just about at 750,000 downloads.
Ooh.
That is just from the current, site that we use.
Yeah, when we transitioned to Nebula, we had to do like a reset of our analytics, basically.
So I think we had like 100,000 or something over on that thing. So we're like pushing 1 million downloads. Can you believe that? A podcast with 1 million, we might be the first ones. No, we're not. But
we average like about, like, the thing is like 750,000. Like every episode averages like an hour long. That's like 750,000 hours. That's so much time we have wasted.
That's so much time that we have given to listeners so that they may enrich their lives. That's what let's say that. Let's not say wasted.
Sure. Yeah, it's wild. And I also think that like when you look at like sheer numbers, I seem to recall, maybe this number is from some random corner that I just made up, but I seem to recall that like your average episode of My Brother and Me gets about 300,000 downloads.
That's pretty good.
It's pretty good, but like they're also like, one of the bigger podcasts, right? So like the fact that we average like what we do, it's like, it's not bad. And they've also been making the podcast for like over a decade, right? So
yeah, for sure. Oh, I did. All right. This is easy. I looked it up on our previous podcast thing. 200,000 downloads on our previous one. So we are at 950,000 downloads currently.
That's pretty sweet. I'll take it.
So another month we'll have 1 million. We haven't even said it yet. Thank you, everyone. Yeah. Thank you for listening. This is us being so self-indulgent for like 10 minutes. And we haven't even said the reason why we have all this fun success and everything is because of you listeners. Thank you for being there for 2 years or a month. Who knows how long you've been listening, but thank you for being there. Thank you for supporting the show, writing reviews.
This is your first episode. It's kind of awkward, but
if this is your first episode, this is not what we normally do.
Yeah, you should probably go to the one before this. You might be better off. But yeah, It's Probably Not Aliens, where we debunk ancient astronaut, ancient aliens, UFO, those kinds of things, and try to have fun and learn about history and the world at the exact same time. And today we've been doing this show we've got a lot of specials coming up. We were talking about this before, how like this is our birthday episode. And then like next week, as I'm sure if you're not listening to this on Nebula, next week, you'll know that next week is Halloween and we're doing a Halloween special. And then like 2 after that is the 100th episode of this podcast where we sat down and did this 100 times.
That's true.
So this is like an episode where we're more reflecting on the show as this has existed, talk about the stories about how the show came into existence and things that we've done and enjoyed and the kinds of interesting conversations that we've had that came out of this weird project that we stumbled into in 2021 because Scott tried to do a podcast with his fiance, now wife. And instead I latched onto it and made it about myself.
I always forget about that.
Yeah. We haven't told the story in a little bit, but it'd probably be a good way to start, which is that back in 2021, around sometime in like March or February, Scott was looking to start a podcast project with Emily, his wonderful girlfriend at the time, now wife.
Now wife.
My wife.
My wife.
But then one of the recommendations that someone put down that we really need to like remember the name of, I feel like that person's way more important to our lives for the amount of credit they get.
We don't know this piece of lore. It's been lost to time currently.
Yeah, I'm sure if we looked up on Twitter something, we could find it, or while Twitter still exists. Anyways, this person was like, you should do a show where you debunk ancient aliens. And I piped up because that was a project that I had been like sitting on for years that I was like thinking of doing. There was a time where I was kind of in back and forth with Matt Mildred Thought Slime about doing the show with him. But then, we both got busy and it kind of fell through. But yeah, so I just it was kind of always just sitting, being like, this would be a cool thing to do someday. Like, I think many of us have things that we sit on like, hey, this would be a project I could pick up and do someday if time ever allows. And I replied just being like, this is a thing. This is I'm literally thinking about this entire show. I've been thinking about this show for a while. And eventually that just turned into us talking because we've collaborated on several videos in the past that went really well. Like we did, again, personal bias, obviously, but my favorite Nerdsync video about nuclear weapons
the one
and
that
Superman.
You're in. Yeah.
But it also it's really good. Like you went all out. You bought apocalypse gear. There was makeup. There was cool static and had some creepy music.
I haven't done that in a while.
You locked your imposter syndrome in the attic or in the basement, and you haven't let him out since
that's true.
Since Captain Marvel happened, and Captain Marvel has a sequel coming out
now. So goodness,
gotta let him out.
Anyway, this is a lot of lore that is probably confusing if you don't follow us on YouTube. But basically, yeah, Tristan and I worked on a couple YouTube videos together on each other's channels. You did one about Mulan, right? And I was in that as well. Yeah. So we've worked together here and there, but we weren't really, we didn't like talk on a weekly basis or anything. And until this came out, and I was like, this is a cool idea. We should do this idea for this podcast that you've been sitting on. And now we talk to each other every week. And it's great, and I love it.
I think I might have found it. I found the person.
You found it?
February 4th, 2021. Twitter user Mikla at Mortalk7.
All right.
Who I just realized account says lots of 18 plus retweets. So, keep that in mind.
Keep it in mind.
But replied to the tweet goes on February 4th, 2021, at Scott Nice Wonder said, so Emily and I are thinking about starting a podcast. We wanted to do a research podcast, but we don't know which one yet. We like history, but that's too broad. Gotta find some sort of narrow focus. Gotta find a way to make money off this. Gotta figure it out. Anyways, something that is niche, but also can make 100+ episodes. Content is hard. And Mikla Mortalk7 typed on in and said, replied a podcast where you watch every Ancient Aliens episode and make a podcast for each episode reacting to the nonsense and debunking it. Emily was like, that would be great. And then Mikla's just like, there's little that's more enjoyable than just watch this nonsense and make fun of it. Also, it has 188 episodes and would fit Scott's 100+ episode rule. And then if Emily and her dad don't do it, I'll get Tristan PEJ to start a podcast with me about it. He'll be this I feel like I should like make a fracture of this tweet.
Okay.
If Em and her dad don't do it, I'll get at Tristan PEJ to start a podcast with me about it. He'll be the smart one informing the audience and making jokes, and I'll be the one going, oh, rad, that's interesting, neat. Wow. Like that is the podcast. That is
literally what this show is. Only instead I say interesting. That's what I actually say.
I replied, that's actually on a list of quote podcast to do someday.
Wow.
Not even joking.
Now we're doing it.
I'm going to take a screenshot of that. I actually might make a fracture of that.
This is a piece of history.
Yeah.
This is, and I want to circle back to it. Like, again, you and I were friendly, but we weren't, necessarily like,
we were VidCon
friends, really. Like, we were friendly, but we were like internet acquaintances. And then, cut to a couple months ago, I got married and you were at my wedding. You were at my bachelor party.
Yeah.
It's all because of this podcast. Yeah.
We were people who were regularly at VidCon together. That was like our thing, right?
Yeah, that was our thing.
Because we had broken bread at Denny's together.
As you do at VidCon, yeah.
Yeah. when we met up in person back in this summer, I think I remember that the last time we met was at Denny's, and you were telling me about how you had met this person named Emily, and she was so cool, and I'm like so over the heels, but we just started dating, and I'm like,
yes,
it's come full circle. And then the next time I see you is the wedding.
Yep. I'm just like, yeah, I met this girl. I like her a lot. Yeah, we had only been dating for a couple months at that point, and then because it was at a point where like if I traveled somewhere, we weren't serious enough where she would go with me because we'd only been dating for like 2 or 3 months. So it was just like, I'll see you later, and then and now we're married. Look at us. Look at us go.
Look at how life moves along. For me, we started this show, and like within 2 months of this show starting, found out that Kelly was pregnant, and then now, and also when we went there, the little man in his little tuxedo showed up, made a brief appearance at the wedding.
So cute.
So this is like, not only is this show like a big part of like our professional careers and creative outlets, but just like show that a real friendship came out of it.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's a thing that we do every week. It's a big part of our structure every week. And it's so much of it is just because of, that your research and me sitting here saying interesting, and then all the people who want to listen to it and give us reviews and shout it out. I talk about this podcast being successful numbers wise. We've only had a couple sponsors here and there, but I do hope in the future that this continues to grow, and maybe it'll be a big part of our actual money-making careers someday.
Yeah, I genuinely, like, this is not even me being hyperbolic or anything like that. I genuinely think that this show has the potential to, in like a few years' time, maybe not you, because you're a big boy YouTuber. You're in a much more advanced place than I am. But for me to at least be able to say like, the podcast is like my main gig, and like the YouTube is like the second thing. Even though I really like the YouTube channel, it's just like the show I think has a lot more potential. And I think one of the big reasons, you weren't in the room when this happened, but the listeners who listened last week will know that when we talked to Rod, he was talking about why he liked the show. And I think that this scratches a lot of people, which is that it's really good for the people who love to like watch weird conspiracy theory content, but don't actually believe the stuff in it. And so it sort of scratches that itch without you feeling like you're like giving undue attention to nonsense or exposing yourself to nonsense.
Yeah, for sure. Like, there is part of it that is interesting. When we talk about it every week, I'm like, it is interesting to sort of hear what these theories are, but I don't necessarily want to corrupt my search history and the algorithms that I genuinely believe in this stuff. I just want to sort of know what other people think. Mm-hmm. That's a really good point.
There is like a thing that's also called the illusory truth effect, which is just that like, even if you don't believe it and you know it's not true, just being exposed to bad ideas too regularly will make it start feeling more normal and acceptable in your head. It's just like a way our brain processes information. Yeah. So that, I think, is also part of
the danger.
To have the nonsense then immediately replied to with no.
Yeah.
Here's what it actually
laughing
is.
At it. Yeah. And I know just here in a bit we're gonna play some messages that are some of you listeners have sent in, some voice messages, which we really appreciate. But I also just want to shout out the people who leave reviews on Apple Podcasts and leave messages on Spotify and everything like that. I was on a podcast recently, and it's like a comedy video game podcast, and they had this saying, which I really think is great, which is the more 5-star reviews that their podcast gets and that our podcast gets, the more people take us seriously. And I think that's a fun way to frame it, because we always say that this is more of a entertainment podcast. Like, yes, there's some educational value, but like, we're not experts who are legitimately actually, we're not archaeologists who are in the field studying this stuff. We're just debunking it every week in a fun, entertaining way. And the more reviews, the more 5-star reviews we get, the more legitimate the show is, or at least seems to outside people. And that really means a lot to us as we fight some more, misinformation.
Yeah. The other thing that I could also say is that this is the first, I think I've said this on the show before. I don't know. Maybe you've had this experience as well. As somebody who's like an artist, creative type, this is like the dual thing. Like I have like, I'm a person who has been now for like 8 years a person who puts out creative content on the internet on a regular basis. And I'm trying to phrase this in a way so it doesn't sound like I'm taking offense to this, but like none of my friends watch any of my stuff, and I don't care. Like that does not bother me at all that like my friends don't watch my videos. That's fine. And like they always apologize for not watching it, and it's like, no, it's completely fine. There's a lot of shit on the internet and you're friends with me, not my videos. Don't worry about it.
Right.
But It's Probably Not Aliens is the first thing where like people that I've known for a long time are like without me being prompting it or anything, are starting to be in like, so I found the podcast, and like I get like texts from friends while they're walking their dog while listening to the show and stuff that. I am in about a week going to my second wedding of the year, where the father of the bride has made intentional like statements about wanting to talk to me about the podcast.
Yeah, we're a dad cast.
We're a dad cast.
People love it. The dads love it. They love listening to this show. We appreciate that. Yeah, I think it's great. I think it's very fun. This is a fun thing we get to do. You want to just jump into some listener messages? We've not listened to these.
Yeah, we want to get the raw recording as much as we could. So what this is I put out a call on. I tweeted, I skated, asking people to email us with audio clips about the, celebrating this show's second birthday and what this show means to them and that kind of stuff. And it was on very short notice. I think I only gave people about 2 days because that was the amount between when I came up with this idea and when we started recording. So we only got a handful, but they're all, and none of us have heard them yet. But so it could be like, just like, hi, Scott and Tristan, and then just screaming into the microphone. Or just, so we literally, we had to work out the audio things to get this to work properly before the show started. And we had to be like extra careful to make sure that none of the stuff that like,
not listen to.
Yeah. So this is 100% fresh.
So this could be bad. Someone could come in and be like, you guys are awful.
You're
we don't like you. And you're not good at it. All right, let's listen to it. First one is from Ian.
Hi, this is Ian Stewart from Vegreville, Alberta. I started listening to Probably Not Aliens last year while I was off from work after a PTSD diagnosis, and I was in a really bad place mentally at the time, and the podcast was something that I found that I could listen to that could distract me from a lot of bad stuff that was going through my head at the time. It was one of the ways that I could find that I could relax, and I knew I would have a bit of respite from a lot of the stuff that I was going through. To make it a little funnier, at the time I was also playing XCOM 2 in the background, somewhat appropriately. So I've been a fan of Tristan's channel for a long time and discovered Scott's through the podcast, but have become a huge fan as well. So thank you for doing a great podcast that really helped me through a bad time in my life. Yeah, Ian Stewart from Vegreville. Thank you.
That's great. Man, off the gate strong. Well, that one hits hard.
Yeah? How so?
Like, we do this show and it goes out into the universe, and oftentimes like, you get like the responses, the memes and the people stuff they say publicly, but like that was like the idea that the show helped somebody in some way while going through a PTSD diagnosis, like, yeah, holy shit.
Yeah, it's always nice to know that. I mean, yeah, you and I are YouTubers. We see numbers, right? We see like the views and the subscribers, but we don't, it's hard to see the people behind it. And so that this sort of stuff is really nice. It is funny that he was playing XCOM as well.
I feel like this is a very good podcast to listen to while playing XCOM, especially because that game, like Ancient Aliens, is extremely frustrating. 95% chance to hit, you say, huh?
Oh boy.
You ever play XCOM?
Oh boy. No, but I am playing Baldur's Gate 3 right now, and I know that's got a similar turn-based sort of
combat. Except that, like, it's just that compared to Baldur's Gate, it's much more brutal. Like, because your squad mates can just die, and you don't have a scroll to bring them back.
You don't have a revivify. Yeah.
No. So it means that like if they die, they just die, and some stuff like it's harsher in that sense, but it is like fighting aliens that are trying to invade the Earth.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Ian. That was really nice. I like knowing that you always think about you always comment, I don't even know on or off the microphone, that especially when we started, it's fun to know that Ian was a fan of you first and then discovered me through the podcast. I think that's really fun.
Yeah, that's that isn't usually how it plays out. But like and also like the people I think that we've talked about that we find the most fascinating are the people who find the podcast and then are surprised to find out that we're YouTubers.
Yeah, they have no idea that we have videos that we make separately. Yeah. All right. Let's keep going. You think? Yeah. This one is from Louise.
All right.
So there's a Tristan and Ice Wonder recording their newest podcast. When death arrived, and Outdot wondered if it could be aliens, perhaps. No way, no how, responded Tristan. I don't know nothing, Scott replied. Lost in her thoughts, old Death then asked them if she could have a Scooby snack. No way, no how, screamed Ice Wonder. He guessed like this, then said Tristan. He'd rather we would get abducted than ever share the Scooby snacks. Abducted then you will be promptly, an angry death to heaven's cry, and our two hosts were swiftly harvested to the big mothership in the afterlife.
Poetry.
That's fantastic. It is so funny to me. When we started this podcast, we were like, at least I was very much like, we're not going to have running gags. Every episode is going to be its own thing. And it's so quickly how stuff just sticks. Like me saying, I know nothing is like, it was just like, it was like a nothing thing that I said. And then suddenly it just becomes the thing that I say at the start of every episode.
Honestly, I am in the exact opposite camp in that I am a humongous fan of committing to the bit.
Yeah.
Extremely hard. I mean, like, that's just the nature of any like long-term conversation. If you think about this as like a 90 something hour long conversation, it's going to end up with its recurring bits. That's just the way that our monkey brains like to find humor in things. And like to this day, like the recurring bits are one of my favorite things in the show, to the point where, I don't know if you saw this, but last night somebody pointed out that I got yet another movie fact wrong in like the last episode.
God. What did you say?
I gotta go get it. It's on Twitter's, it's on Elon's Nazi website.
I know you don't have Apple products, so you don't check the Apple podcast reviews, but someone did write us an incredibly like hilariously like scathing bad review about like how we're probably triple vaxxed and like Elon made us sad, so we deleted our Twitter accounts or something like that, but then gave us 5 stars.
I love it. That's beautiful. I talked about Arrival, and I referred to the Arrival as tetrapods when they're heptapods.
Heptapods. See, that's fun. Like the recurring gag of you not knowing movie facts, I think is fine because that's like a personality thing. But I've listened to podcasts before where like you're 100 episodes in and half of the things that the hosts say are like inside jokes that you don't get unless you've listened to the past 100 episodes. And it's like, I don't necessarily want to evolve into that because every episode could be someone's first episode, especially for our podcast where it's like very topic based. People might not listen to every episode. Yeah. People might only listen to ones that they're interested in.
Especially if like in the future, because next year Google is retiring its like podcast platform and folding it into YouTube, which I suspect means that in the future YouTube is going to have like podcasts and videos are going to kind of be more side by side on YouTube. And that means that we're going to probably have more episodes listened to by people who looked for a topic rather than looked for a show.
Yeah.
And I do intentionally try to make sure that every episode of this show is accessible to someone who has never heard this show before.
Except for the first 10 minutes when you and I ramble about something that is completely off topic and then hope people keep listening.
That's inaccessible to basically everybody. That's inaccessible to everyone who's not the two of us.
That's inaccessible to me when I edit them. I'm like, why did we talk about this for so long?
Oh boy, yeah.
All right, do you want to keep listening to more?
Yes, thank you, Louise. That was really great.
That was great. We got a couple more. This one is from Daniel.
Hey, Scott and Tristan. I don't usually do this sort of thing, and I apologize for the qualities. I'm on my phone recording this, but like, just wanted to call in and give you guys props for the awesome work I think you're doing. The show honestly has helped me get through some pretty tough stuff related to depression and financial issues. So, I just wanted to say thank you and acknowledge the effect the show's had on me. I started listening to the show as a little baby archaeology major working on my first excavation. Shout out to the Cape Canaveral Archaeological Mitigation Program.
Woo!
It's a great little thing they got going on over there. Now I have my bachelor's and a whole extra dig in Poland under my belt, and I'm prepping for grad school. You guys kind of got me through all that, because God knows senior year was not fun. But being able to wake up to you guys on a Tuesday and kind of just forget about everything while I listen has helped me immensely, and I just want to get across that I hope you guys know the impact you've had on me, as well as I'm sure others. So beyond that, I guess my other question would be, do you guys have any other plans to cover anything in Eastern Europe? Because that's kind of my specialty, but I know there's less going on over there, Ancient Aliens wise. So yeah, no, that's mainly what I got going on. Otherwise, thank you again, and have a great rest of your show.
Yeah.
Another thing to real hit hard about how people through it's so great to see new archaeologists, and also to have an archaeologist who listens to the show and likes it and doesn't, like, I'm always worried that like anybody who actually knows what they're talking about is going to listen to my show and be like,
yeah,
this guy is an idiot.
No.
But yeah, that sounds like, I mean, as somebody who went to grad school and somebody who remembers upper year, when you want to go to grad school, you have to not only get through college, you have to get through college with a pretty high GPA, and also deal with like, if you're in America, like GREs and stuff like that. Yeah, that can be an extremely stressful time. And obviously you need to have a lot of motivation. And with a condition like depression, that basically just saps all of your motivation away to the point where it's like a victory that you managed to take a shower that day. Sometimes that is,
yeah, for sure.
That is tough. That sounds like that is a really tough situation. And if there's any way that us faffing about once a week helps you get through that, I am over the moon.
Yeah. And then as like a small side thing, I know that they mentioned waking up on a Tuesday to episodes. I know you and I have been playing around with the idea of moving it to Thursday release schedule, because that's when we record, but we'll figure it out. We want to get back to doing a more consistent release schedule than we have been. I got married and I went on a honeymoon, and then I had other things happen recently. We're getting back in the swing of things.
Yeah.
So thanks for sticking with us.
Luckily, we've got a whole new plan in place so that by the time you're listening to this episode, we should be in a place where, not only is the episodes coming out regularly, but also the Nebulons are getting their early episodes as well.
Early releases back again. Yes.
So we got a plan.
We got a plan, Daniel.
But yeah, Daniel, that really, like, I want to kind of like, just to like pause here and like point out, like, when people talk about the stuff that I make, helping them through tough times in life, especially like mental health, hard times, how much that is like super important to me. And also you talked about how like financial squeeze as well. And that how much I love the fact that I make stuff that is free, that you do not need to pay a single dime to pay into. The show is on Nebula, but I want to make sure that no matter what I am making, that there is always, the vast majority of it is for everybody for free, even if it's released early or there's the occasional exclusive thing, but that the main bulk of what comes out is free.
Yeah, like this show's on Nebula, but really it's just episodes early occasionally, and then the very rare exclusive episode that is like a totally different sort of thing that we would do. But I mean, other than that, the show is free for every episode. Yeah.
But like, that's one of the reasons I really like being like a social media content creator instead of like somebody who worked in like, something like traditional television or something like that, is that I have never in my adult life been blessed with an overabundance of money. And so I've always appreciated that there's just so much free stuff to listen to.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the other obviously benefit of Nebula is when we do have the occasional sponsor, Nebula stuff is ad free versus ads in the main feed here and there, but we've not really had that many ads and sponsors and things, so we'll get
one
there.
Step at a time.
Maybe one day.
Yeah.
We got just a couple more to hit on. This one's from Eric.
Hey guys, this is Eric Slater from Epic Fails of History, the Super Switch Club, and Podcasters Assemble. And I just wanted to say congrats on 2 years. I've been absolutely impressed with your consistency right out the gate, especially as a content creator myself who constantly struggles with juggling too many projects. Believe it or not, you both have actually helped to inspire me to continue my own podcasting endeavors, and I'm really hoping to be set up to get into the YouTube space next next year. The thing I love about your show is that you debunk all the ridiculous ancient aliens theories, especially because they're inherently ludicrous and often insulting to indigenous peoples. As someone who writes and podcasts about history, that is absolutely my jam. However, I actually started out as an ardent skeptic on the whole alien topic, but I've been following the UAP story very closely since the 2017 New York Times article first dropped, and I gotta admit, I've kinda come full circle in that time. So my question to you guys is, what's your take on Chuck Schumer's 64-page UAP Disclosure Act? If you read the legislation, the bill uses the terms non-human intelligence and enigmatic technologies, as well as spelling out a process for how to declassify all this evidence to the public. Now, maybe I'm gullible, but it really does sound like there's something tangible here, especially considering the recent releases from AARO, the congressional hearings, and with NASA officially being tasked with studying the phenomenon. As I'm recording this, it looks as though the Senate just passed this as part of the NDAA. So as long as this doesn't get taken out of the final budget, we should actually get some real answers sometime next year. While I do think it's good to be skeptical, it's also worth pointing out that throughout history, there have been some pretty radical worldview shifts that the governments of the world and even the scientific community have really pushed back on, despite the evidence, like the heliocentric model of the solar system, the theory of continental drift, and, of course, quantum physics. Now, there is, of course, always the possibility that this is all an elaborate psyop within the DoD, which, to be fair, has happened before. Our government lies constantly. They don't exactly have a good track record. But the difference now is the sheer scope of what's been happening on a global scale, not including, of course, the cinnamon-flavored Nazca mummies. But the amount of credible whistleblowers coming forward and the unprecedented bipartisan support on the issue really has me reconsidering some of my original preconceived notions on this topic. So we're in this weird liminal space now where it feels like there's a 50-50 chance where there's either an elaborate, unprecedented government conspiracy or aliens are real. To me, Occam's razor is now starting to point the other direction. I guess what I'm trying to say is that I want to believe in democracy. Anywho, I can't wait to hear your thoughts. I'm actually kind of jealous because if this all turns out to be true in the next few years, your podcast could actually become a part of history. Thanks again, guys, and good luck.
Ooh.
Wow.
Good long message.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's some really good stuff in there. And like, first of all, I really appreciate that. Like, we've helped you like build up your own sort of social media project things.
Yeah.
That's really
awesome.
cool.
Can I hit on something really quickly before you dive on in? There is a very specific reason why we titled this show It's Probably Not Aliens. Mm-hmm. And that is specifically because of a lot of this stuff that Eric was hitting on here. We're like, this is not us, episode by episode definitively saying aliens do not exist. What we're trying to do is look at the ancient astronaut theory and ancient aliens conspiracy theories and show how they are harmful to a lot of non-white cultures, basically, or just like people's views of the past. But we've always, at least I hope it's clear that we've always sort of come at these topics by saying, like, we are not saying that aliens in a broad sense definitively don't exist. It would be really exciting and interesting if aliens did exist. And I want to believe as well. So there was some thought put into the title of this podcast of It's Probably Not Aliens.
To kind of build on that, like when we first started the show, I was kind of excited by the and I've recently realized is he's like a little bit of a not a person that should be trusted, of Avi Loeb's claims about the Oumuamua extrasolar system asteroid that because of some like outgassing from heat like accelerated in a weird way that he suggested was like a solar sail. That had me very intrigued for a while before it very quickly got debunked. And then Actually, Angela Collier, who came on this show a few months ago, also did a really great episode of her podcast on her YouTube channel, really breaking down why Avi Loeb's a bit of a problem. But that's besides the thing. But yeah, like the way that if you want like a full like response to what the hell's going on, because yeah, since 2017 there has been some like more and more serious rumblings about what the other side or what's going on with this whole thing, specifically about like the UAP project and all that kind of things. And I guess I can like kind of sum up the way that I see it. And Scott, you can also chime in on anything that you feel is pertinent to discuss. But the main thing that the UAP task force that started in 2017 was trying to address is that there's a lot of things that people are seeing in the sky that are doing unprecedented, strange activity that in the military infrastructure had a strong stigma attached to reporting on it because they would think that you were reporting on UFOs, i.e. seeing flying saucers.
And that would make you look not serious. People wouldn't take you seriously.
Yeah, it would hurt your career. But as we are entering into a world where drones and spycraft and like the sort of technology leading to national borders starting to become more fuzzy, these things that we would dismiss as like, oh, you saw flying saucers, little green men, ha ha ha, can be taken seriously because these might actually be signs of national security threats. And so there's that aspect. And I think that a lot of like the sort of consciousness raising that came out of the congressional, the stuff in like 2017 congressional stuff speaks a lot to that. As far as like Chuck Schumer's stuff goes and the sort of we did a whole episode about the David Grush and the probably need to go back to the congressional hearings.
Yeah, we'll probably have to revisit that for sure.
On that thing, like I will point out that governments are not like they are not these like monolithic organizations that are extremely careful in their language all the time, especially like individual politicians. Like Chuck Schumer has a long history of being into UFOs. And so if somebody came to him saying that there was like UFO stuff that he could latch onto, he would be much more amenable to bringing that up. And David Grush's thing, I think I talked about how like governments have been talked into these things all the time. And everything that I saw from the congressional hearings and Grush's like body of evidence, to me anyways, are fairly unconvincing. It's very much like I talked to a guy and he told me that he saw these things. And like the problem is that he is a person that if there were secret UFOs, he could have seen them.
Right.
But the fact that he did not reference to seeing them in person or like even seeing photos, like real photos or anything like that, he just sort of talks about like inference and like hearing rumors. And America's military bureaucracy it's unbelievable how huge and unchecked it is.
Yeah, it's so big.
Yeah. And so lots of people are investigating lots of things because there's basically infinite money to go into any harebrained scheme you want, even if it's very low chance. And NASA also getting into it. Like I would say that like you kind of pointed out as two options when I think there's three. There is the idea that this is all a psyop because like the US is no longer like unquestionably the most powerful country in the history of all existence, but they still want to like raise military funding, like in a Cold War way, instead of saber rattling with countries that could very well like bite back, which they couldn't do before. They're going to, build this concept of like alien invaders as a threat that could result in them raising the military budgets. That's like one theory that goes through. And it's one of those ones that like, I wouldn't be surprised, but it's also not super convincing because that's a very flimsy thing to do.
Yeah.
The other option is that the UFOs do exist and that this is like UFOs do exist and that this is like their effort to try and like a legislative effort to try and take this stuff that's been held under wraps and make it public, which like at this point, like I would like that would be really cool if it turned out to be true. I have lots of questions. The thing though is that is of such huge implication and has such like changes our entire concept of like what is the nature of life and what technology is capable of, because as I mentioned, like for a spacecraft to get to Earth would require physics and understandings of the universe that is beyond human comprehension at this point, and amounts of energy harnessed that we can't even conceive of. So that part, like, obviously have a lot of questions. If that turns out to be true and there's like, really good evidence of it that comes to the surface, that would be huge. I think that would be really, I would be so excited to see what comes out of that. But I, given like the sort of general logic of it, that this stuff is like, you can see see the arrival of flying saucers in Western culture tied to the advent of science fiction and more high-tech flying machines through like the Cold War and World War II advances in technology, and also like the sort of professionalization of medicine and all that kind of stuff. And the fact that the aliens are remarkably human-like in many of the like firsthand accounts of them. That stuff makes me like very, very dubious of what this actually is.
Right.
And so like my alarms are going off that like, if this is true, there's going to be a lot of questions I have that would need to be answered. And I would need something a lot stronger than one guy going to Congress and saying he saw a bunch of stuff. I actually think that there's a third option here. And this is the one that I'm most leaning into, which is that governments are run by human beings and that the US military is a particularly large and really unchecked,
it's so big,
organization where they have so much money and so much power, and they are investigating so many different projects at a time that it's impossible for the left hand to know what the right hand's doing at any given time. In fact, the reason why the Department of Homeland Security was made in 2001 after 9/11 was because basically like American intelligence was made up of 3 massive organizations that weren't talking to each other. And so they had to like, in the 9/11 Commission report, they basically pointed out that like, oh yeah, the FBI, CIA, and NSA all had like different sides of this story, but they didn't talk to each other. They weren't able to tell what was going on or take it seriously enough before 9/11 happened. And so they made DHS to try and bridge that gap. The military, the US military, is way bigger than those organizations. Like it is so big. It is the largest military in the history of humanity. And it is one that is investigating lots of different projects. And politicians are not people who are selected by any process other than them being able to get elected. So I am more under the impression that there are people who, for wanting attention or who think that there is like a big UFO conspiracy and want to try to get it to come through, are able to convince public servants like Chuck Schumer or other sort of people who are officials in government that this stuff exists and are doing that work to either get themselves on the news or to accidentally trip up the UFOs or something like that. Like, I do think that that is the most likely option, is that they're just kind of bamboozling a few politicians. And given how large and unchecked the American military infrastructure is, it's hard for anybody to clarify that they are not investigating anything, and that it's also drawing a lot of attention to the government. And I feel like at the same time, they are taking seriously this investigation of UAPs because, as the US is sort of like a downwardly mobile empire right now, they are probably fairly concerned about, and like you're even seeing this in Ukraine, like that other countries are developing more and more sophisticated drone technology. Iran has Predator drones, Russia has Predator drones, or has drones, and China has like a big drone program. And so I think that they're trying to get attention for taking seriously the study of like, you know, enemy aircraft drones that could be doing stuff. And this is a way to do it. And I think that's like why NASA's on board, is because NASA would have like the scientists and the expertise there to do so. But if you brand it through, this could be alien stuff that we're investigating, I think that that also gives NASA more attention. And I think that NASA is always an organization that is struggling to justify its existence to people who want to cut its budget. So doing like a project like we're investigating UFOs would be one that would get it a lot of positive press. So in many ways, it's just the fact that the US government is not that centralized. It's not that organized. And there are lots of different parties at play that are working against each other. And it's hard to really tell what's going on in any place. And in that, there's a lot of people and with power and a lot of room to convince people of a lot of things. And because UFOs are sexy and buzzy, that it's also a way to guarantee that you're going to get attention to whatever it is that you want to get attention to. And that's a big part of like deciding budgets and deciding how much like attention things get and like all that kind of stuff. So like that's my more answer.
It feels like a topic that we're gonna have to talk about in like a whole dedicated episode at some point.
I'm still on the impression that our first knowledge of extraterrestrial intelligence is not going to come by the government saying that they've had all this technology that they could have used in the Cold War but chose not to for some reason, but it's going to be more something that comes around because of like Kepler looking at an exoplanet and finding some like definitive signs of like pollution or biosignatures of some kind or some sort of like communication. I think that's going to be where we hear about it.
Which is to hammer home again that we are never coming at these topics and these episodes with the belief that wholeheartedly aliens don't exist. We're open-minded, and we definitely...
That would be an insane
we've
thing
talked
to say.
about it a lot.
It's insane to say that there's no such, like...
Yeah.
To say that aliens do not exist, they guarantee exist. The universe is way too big, and we exist. They have to be somewhere else. Are there other intelligent aliens in this galaxy? That's more of a question to me. I don't know for sure. Are there intelligent aliens in the universe? Guaranteed. But like, to me, I'm under the impression that like alien intelligence is going to be so unrecognizable to us that we are going to have debates about what life means, what intelligence means, and what organisms mean in the future when we actually find details about these things, because life that is truly evolved in an alien environment is going to almost be like, I think that we're going to accidentally kill something intelligent because we didn't even realize that it was life and that it was intelligent.
This is this big space gas cloud, and we just drive through it with a satellite, and then we accidentally kill it. Yeah, we didn't even realize that it was a live thing.
And like at this point, like if we haven't seen signs of alien civilizations yet, it to me makes me pretty convinced that the idea of superluminal travel is either not going to happen, or it is like it's prohibitively expensive or physically impossible for some reason. And so I'm pretty convinced that we're like the idea that like a UFO could have harnessed the energy and physics to get here would require like some significant evidence to convince me.
Sure. All right, we got one more. You want to do one last one?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right.
Hello, alien debunkers.
Woo.
My question, would you consider crossing the streams, as it were, and doing It's Probably Not Ghosts?
Ooh.
My testimonial, It's Probably Not Aliens is a fun show, for its subject matter and educational value, even if it frequently makes us sad that people living through history tend to have such little respect for it. And those are good on their own, but my favorite thing is the way you break down the full thought process or evidentiary chain. We, the listeners, can follow how the scientific approach is applied to these, air quotes, theories, and hear how they break down in the face of verifiable history. In our present climate rife with bald-faced, bad-faith claims, this isn't just refreshing, it's useful for navigating the modern era and lies in other areas as well. And I appreciate that.
Yeah, so that was from James. Appreciate it, James. We've teased the idea of doing It's Probably Not Ghosts before. I just don't know. With ancient aliens and ancient astronaut theory, there's so many different theories and conspiracies to tackle, whereas It's Probably Not Ghosts. Ghosts are like I feel like that's a case-by-case thing. We'd have to do like actual focus on a specific ghost, you know, and sort of be like, all right, is this place haunted? Is this ghost a thing? And whereas ghosts like just talking about ghosts as a whole concept would be hard to do because, you know, the typical ways that people like, you know, get a read on if ghosts are real or not. There are fewer conspiracies other than just like the specific ghosts themselves. You know what I mean? But it'd be fun to do.
Yeah, I'm primarily coming to this from like the conspiracy debunking angle.
Yeah.
I'm going to say like, I don't hate the idea. I actually like the idea. I can already think of like a whole bunch of ways in which the ghost thing would be really, really cool. Or just like, for example, spoiler alert, next week is our Halloween special and I'm doing a little bit on cryptids. We're going to talk about cryptids as a concept. But like, I do think that like in the same way that like, It's Probably Not Aliens can talk about interesting like the actual history behind it and like all the stuff that's being glossed over, you could definitely do the same with all sorts of paranormal claims and phenomenon. And I think that if, say, for example, we're doing this show like 20 years from now and we really, really tap out ancient astronaut theory, we really tap out UFO stuff, and we're looking for new places to explore, that is definitely like high on the list of like things I would consider, because I have seen many times where like ghost claims, while like the only thing is like you have to go on like a different angle because like we're like ghosts, but also like, you know, cryptids and stuff like that. Cryptids, I could make the claim about like how they're taking history out of context and mythology out of context.
Oh, sure.
Ghosts often are like, a lot of the times the claims come from, like, as you said, there's various different ways to hoax it, various different ways that people can think they see ghosts but aren't. There'd be some very easy stuff to talk about because like almost every city has a ghost tour, and it just turns into either a macabre history of the city, which is you know, fine and interesting, or it is I have seen so many ghost stories from ghost tours that have their only origin in books called Ghost Tours of X City.
You're right.
So like there's a lot to chew on with that, and I definitely like would love this show to become successful to the point where we have done all of the UFO stuff and we're moving into new territory.
Or if this show becomes so successful that we get consistent sponsors and it becomes like the thing that we do with our lives, like I could see us doing spin-offs and doing, I mean, we can do, it's probably not ghosts and it wouldn't just be ghosts, it could just be supernatural stuff in general. The way that this show about aliens sometimes talks about time travel, you know, which is not necessarily an alien thing. So, you know, we talk about the science fiction sort of thing or you know, the historical science of things, whereas it's probably not ghosts. If we ever did that spin-off show, could absolutely be just supernatural, paranormal sort of stuff.
A lot more
in
sciencey,
general.
I think.
Yeah, you think so?
Yeah, because like talking about psychic phenomenon and like there's a lot to chew on, and I would love to get to the point where that was a thing that we could consider, because I would also love to do that, and that would be great stories to cover. I also just wanted to thank you very much for the thing that you said, James, about like showing the line of evidentiary thinking, because that is an intentional thing I tried to do when I did this show, about walking you through not only this is wrong, but like this is how I came to the conclusion that it was wrong and how I like looked it up. Luckily, with ancient astronaut theory, it's like shooting fish in a barrel. You don't have to do that much work to figure it out. But that's fine, because I think, as you mentioned, we are kind of in a age where information is a grasp on reality is starting to loosen because of like, you know, various different propaganda efforts, and just the fact that like our trust in institutional knowledge is starting to wane and lead to people embracing all sorts of wacky stuff because of recommendation algorithms and whatnot. Like again, that would be like that. I literally made an hour-long video about this just like a couple days ago. But like that is like a thing that I intentionally try to in my work counter as somebody who is into teaching people how to like think for themselves, and also teaching people about real history, and also trying to counter things like right-wing extremism and all these things. Like this is all part of my overall project. Secretly, I'm doing SJW nonsense the entire time. And I'm glad that people have picked up on that, and that's a thing that they enjoy. And also, you have an amazing voice. I'm obsessed with it, and you should definitely voice some video game characters. I feel like
it's so good.
I want to hear you talk so much more.
But yeah, I think that's a good
I got one more thing. I got one quick thing. Because there's another person named James Morgan who tried several times to send us a file, but could not get it to like upload and stuff like that, and sent us like a text thing about what they wanted to say. And I just want to make sure they didn't fall under the radar.
Oh, absolutely. This is from James Morgan, different James. I just wanted to say your podcast has been one of my absolute favorites, and that you need to do a biography on Mark Richards, parentheses, the SSP/Pendragon murder guy, in parentheses, and his wife. Their claims, parentheses, lies, end parentheses, are absolutely insane, and I'd love to hear your take on it. I don't know anything about this. What is this about?
Okay. Do you remember a million years ago when I did an episode?
I wasn't born yet.
We did. You remember like way early in this show's history when we did a episode on the secret space program, and I mentioned that there was a guy who tried to start his own
that's what
Knight's
SSP stands for, Secret Space Program.
Mark Richards is the guy who tried to take over a county and become basically king and start like a Knights Round Table in his county, and like killed a guy and is currently in prison for it. So I do think that we only touched the surface of Secret Space Program, and I would definitely love to go back there, because there is a lot of hot nonsense going on there, and it's definitely an underserved thing. Like it's definitely like a conspiracy UFO movement that's going under the radar, but is growing very fast. I only found out about it because of Matt Mildred Thought Slime actually told me about it and was like, you need to check this out. And Oki of Oki's Wild Stories is like the only person I've seen who's really like tackled the topic. And so I would love to do it.
There's so many. Yeah, we should dive back into it. There are a lot of topics that we need to like go back and do some follow up on. This feels like a huge one that we need to be like following pretty closely.
Yeah, I'll try to figure something out, because it's going to be one of those things where, because not a lot of secondary research has been done about it.
Yeah,
I'm gonna have to go and watch these people's streams.
You're gonna have to infiltrate the secret space program, Tristan. You're gonna have to get in there and tear it apart from the inside.
All I can think of is, unfortunately, is from a terrible TV show, but How I Met Your Mother. Where there was a one bit where what's called Neil Patrick Harris's rapist dumbest character on that show. Barney Stinson made one bit where he convinced somebody to sleep with him because he said he was not part of NASA, but he was part of SNASA, secret NASA. And then she was like, whoa, have you been to the moon? He's like, I haven't been to the moon, but I have been to the smoon.
Secret moon.
Yeah.
So that's what you got to do. Secret space.
I also think that this show has a lot more stuff that's going to come up as starting next year. It started this year, but it's going to get more big next year, is that we're kind of entering into a new moon race to build a base on the moon with Chandrayaan-3 landing earlier this year. So now India has successfully landed a probe on the moon. Russia tried to land a probe on the moon. It did not go well. And the Shengha Chinese mission to land on the moon by 2030 is going to be a thing. And the US is planning on sending a crew to the moon next year. So it's like the moon and especially the south pole of the moon, and the race to build a thing on the moon is going to probably spur some interesting stuff that we're going to have to look at too.
All right. What's up there? We gotta know what's up there on that moon. How cheesy is it really?
Dangerously.
What happened with that face from the movie, the old black and white movie? Is that face still there that we shot a rocket into?
That French silent film from like 100 years ago.
How's that guy doing up there, that big moon face? We gotta check on him.
And if you want to know the status of the moon face man, you can go to @ProvsNotAliens on either Twitter or Blue Sky or Instagram. I've taken a little bit more of an assertive stance on posting on Blue Sky and Twitter, so Blue Sky is my official lifeboat from Twitter of choice, so that's where I'll be.
Yes.
Actually, on that note, I did this last week, but I'll do it again.
Okay.
Free to a Good Home. I'm giving away, every week I'm going to give away one of our invite codes for It's Probably Not Aliens. So
nice.
Free to a Good Home. If you want to join Blue Sky, you can put in the code BSKY-social-UVYE4-65BUX. So I'll see you there.
All right. Up for grabs.
Yeah.
First come, first serve.
I'm going to try to post more on there, and we'll do some more right-click saving as we go forward.
Absolutely. Tristan, where can people find more of your stuff outside of this show? We talked about it a little bit, that you and I are both YouTubers as well. What kind of YouTube do you do? What tube do you?
What tube do you? I tube you at stepbackhistory.com, a YouTube channel called Step Back, where I try to talk about why understanding the world today involves needing to have a historical literacy. So I use history to understand the world as it is today. And I feel like I'm on a run of episodes that will be particularly good for people who watch this show, because my most recent video that came out at the beginning of October is about media literacy and how powerful people use the media to fuck with your brain. And my next video for the big 6-0 anniversary is I'm going to address the JFK assassination conspiracy theory, which is, I'm sure, going to be replied to in a very normal and calm fashion.
That's going to be very chill.
Yeah.
That comment section.
Scott, if I wanted to learn why Superman and Fat Alfred live in the same universe, where would I need to go?
I don't know.
If I want to learn Fat Alfred and time-traveling Superman pipe comment misconceptions, where would I go?
Did I make that video?
You made that 9 years ago. You still have hair in the picture.
What is Fat Alfred?
I don't know. Maybe it's Fat Al?
Fat Albert?
Fat Albert? I don't know. Fat Alfred and time-traveling Superman.
Okay. I guess I made a video about that on my YouTube channel, Nerdsync, back in the day when I made videos about anything. So that's fun. I don't know. Just follow me. I don't even want to explain. I have no idea what's happening. I have a YouTube channel called Nerdsync.
Nerd culture through creativity and vulnerability. That's your elevator pitch.
That's what I do.
Sometimes you can entire video about gummies, Scooby-Doo gummies.
Scooby-Doo gummy. I don't know anymore. What have I become? You're talking about this old video that I don't remember, and I'm like, I guess I used to make videos about anything, and then I'm just like, oh, I still do actually. So I don't know. Whatever.
A charming person talks about something.
Basically, that's my hope. And you can, of course, I said it before, but thank you to everyone who writes reviews of this show and just shares it around and gives us those good 5-star reviews on Apple Podcasts. It helps us have more credibility, which I think is important. I didn't realize how important that could be, because I just sort of see us as like an entertainment fun thing that we do, but like, we are still trying to, debunk some harmful stuff. So
Scott,
I think,
you of all people should know that sometimes stuff that's just made for entertainment can still be very personally meaningful and impact people's lives. Your entire
that's true.
Online content is about that.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, so all that to say, thank you to everyone who writes reviews and please continue to do so.
Yep.
It really means a lot to us and it helps us out more than you know. And a great place to send people if you're trying to share the show around is probs.aliens.com. It's got links to everything, every place you can listen to the show. It's just great.
Mm-hmm. Also, if you do want to help the show financially, of course, never required, but nice.
Never required.
You could do so by getting a bunch of awesome educational content over at Nebula. Just go to nebula.tv/probablyNotAliens. And if you sign up, you help us out directly.
Yes. It literally like a portion of your subscription goes directly to us, which is just awesome. So helps us out tremendously to make sure that, and hey, if we get enough, maybe we can make It's Probably Not Ghosts. If we get enough support, we'll see how it goes. Anyway, I guess that's everything. To another 2 years and hopefully more. My name is Scott Nicewander.
I'm Tristan Johnson, and the truth is out there. Probably. I realized that I've done a bunch and I just never did normal.
You just never did a normal one. The truth is out there, probably.
Yeah, it's probably out there.
It is probably out there. That's fun.
Let's do this for another 2 years.
Let's do it for exactly 2 more years.